Hi there. It's the 9th of November 2024, and yesterday we saw the inauguration of the incoming president of Botswana, Duma Boko. The inauguration ceremony took place at the National Stadium in Gaborone, and the inauguration was significant in that after the ruling party, after nearly 60 years in power, the Botswana Democratic Party and Mokgweetsi Masisi decided to relinquish power after its election loss and handed over power to the opposition headed by Duma Boko. That was significant as such peaceful handovers of power on the African continent are rare events, and for the Southern Africa region, that's a significant moment, as there are only two countries that I can think of that have had peaceful transfers of power from ruling parties to the opposition. That is Zambia and Malawi. And in Zimbabwe, since 2000, the opposition, as we all know, has been winning all the elections, and the ruling party, first under Robert Mugabe and then under Emerson Mnangagwa, they decide not to acknowledge the opposition victories and hand over power to the opposition. So this is significant, and I would want to focus on one particular person, Nelson Chamisa, for the simple reason that what has happened in Botswana sets a precedent for Zimbabwe, and it's likely that if the authorities in Zimbabwe, the current people who are holding power forcefully in Zimbabwe, who are imposing their their rule on the people of Zimbabwe against their wishes, if they could follow the example of Mokgweetsi Masisi in Botswana, that will actually set a precedent that is likely to herald a new beginning for Zimbabwe. And Nelson Chamisa was interviewed by Botswana television, the state broadcaster, and this is what he had to say.
We must not be vindictive. We must not be pursuing each other. Even former presidents must be...
Coming from Nelson Chamisa, such a statement is significant, and it shows that there is maturity in how the opposition or the leader of the opposition is now approaching the issue of peaceful transfer of power in Zimbabwe, or the potential for such a transfer of power in Zimbabwe. There is no question that the opposition has been winning elections in Zimbabwe since 2002. First under Robert Mugabe. Robert Mugabe lost the elections in 2002 and then in 2008. And in 2008, he had actually agreed to step down. And then Emerson Mnangagwa and other strong-willed figures within ZANU-PF, they actually persuaded Robert Mugabe to stay on. And this is where we are now. And both elections in 2018 and in 2023, the opposition won. But the question is, who is going to acknowledge the opposition's victories? Who is going to actually hand over the power to the opposition? The ruling party, to my knowledge and the way I look at things, is simply that the statements like what Chamisa is making is what actually needed, because the as I will show you later on in the discussion, there are a lot of issues that have been atrocities that have been committed by the ruling party in Zimbabwe, and those those are potentially crimes against humanity, and they might attract the attention of the International Criminal Court. And without guarantees from the opposition, from the people who are going to take over, and in this instance, Nelson Chamisa to be precise, without those guarantees, the people in ZANU-PF, Emerson Mnangagwa, Constantino Chiwenga, they're not going to hand over power to the opposition. They need those guarantees because these people have got serious issues hanging over their heads, and they cannot simply that cannot simply be ignored. Nelson Chamisa goes on, and this is what he later explained.
We don't want a situation whereby former presidents are pursued in a cat and mouse relationship. Let's give them honor, respect. Of course, they made mistakes, omissions and commissions, but let there be honor.
So there he is, saying we acknowledge that former leaders, they might have made mistakes through commissions, through omissions, and that's a lawyerly language. It covers nearly everything. What it means is that, like, even where they have actually gone out and committed acts against their political opponents, against the civilian population in Zimbabwe, or where they have failed to act, once Nelson Chamisa has taken over power, and at least that's the message I'm getting from his statement. He is saying that we are prepared to forgive and forget. We are prepared to let them retire peacefully, go back to their villages, go back to their farms, and retire in peace. And Nelson Chamisa is using Botswana as a test case, and is using Botswana as an example, and how this is likely to be received by Emerson Mnangagwa and the hardliners in ZANU-PF remains to be seen. And the issue is not this is not something to be taken lightly, because the issues, as far as I can tell, the issues like crimes against humanity, they have actually been committed in Zimbabwe. There are multiple instances, and I am not an expert in the international criminal law, but what I understand is that a crime against humanity is considered to have been perpetrated, say, if agents of the state, that is people like the police or the military, or the security services like the Central Intelligence Organizations, or the specialist forces of the police, if they use murder, imprisonment, torture, things like enforced disappearances, if they are used against the civilian population, if it can be demonstrated that there is a systematic use and there is a policy from the government itself and its security agencies, if they are using these against the civilian population, then that qualifies as crimes against humanity. And in Zimbabwe, there are numerous instances of this. For example, say from 1983 to 1987, 20,000 people in Matebeleland under the Gukurahundi massacres, they were murdered by the 5th Brigade, and none of those issues have been addressed. And I am not part of the prosecution or whatever it is, whoever has to prove those cases, but the perpetrators are known, and they are the people who are in charge of ZANU-PF right now. Then there is political violence after ZANU-PF itself lost the elections in 2008. The army went on the rampage. There were instances of murder, imprisonment, enforced disappearances, massive uses of torture, and all these. These issues are in the public domain. It's all there for those who are interested in the recent history of Zimbabwe. It's known. And then there are issues like Murambatsvina. Yeah, the massive demolitions of housing used the members of the opposition, and this is just like in the not too distant past, in Zimbabwe's not too distant past. But then we have even after the coup of 2017, there have been numerous instances where the members of the opposition have been murdered. One, Lavenda Chiwayo in August 2020. Then we have Mboneni Ngube in February of 2022. Then we have more Blessing Ali. And then you have got massive instances where the state is actually carrying out criminal acts against its civilian population. And you have got members of the opposition, Jameson Timber, and he's been held in detention without any charges have been laid. And those instances, those are the sort of issues we have. And when Nelson Chamisa is actually going out on international platforms and is actually issuing out the olive branch to Emerson Mnangagwa and his hardliners in the ZANU-PF government, this is actually what he's talking about. These are the sort of issues. And for Zimbabwe to undergo a peaceful transfer of power, if the opposition, that is, if Nelson Chamisa can actually get everyone else together in the opposition, if they can actually bring out the act together, iron out the problems that are currently in the opposition, and if they were to mount a serious challenge to the to ZANU-PF, they are likely to win the election in 2028. And if they were to win, what is needed is some sort of guarantees to people in ZANU-PF. These are guys with serious issues hanging over their heads, and without guarantees that they won't actually be sent to the International Criminal Court. By the way, Zimbabwe is party to the Statute of Rome. It signed on 17th of July 1998. That's when Zimbabwe signed the Rome Statute. And if, say, a party, it has not been ratified as yet, but Zimbabwe is a signatory to the Statute of Rome. What that means is that if, say, anyone was to be identified as having committed crimes against humanity in Zimbabwe, on Zimbabwean soil, they are likely to be tried in the International Criminal Court in the Hague. And that is what most of these politicians in ZANU-PF, that is what they are afraid of. And to get to a point where we can be satisfied that ZANU-PF will hand over power, Emerson Mnangagwa and his group, they actually need those assurances. And those assurances, what Nelson Chamisa has just done, those public declarations on international television, they are a step in the right direction, but that's not enough. As we saw in 2017 when within ZANU-PF itself, they were negotiating for Robert Mugabe to resign from as president, and his resignation package. You will need mediators. You will need people who can be trusted to actually get the job done. And those things, they can't be done. Well, ZANU-PF, we saw it. It happened in the public on national television. But with this current crop of people in ZANU-PF, I don't think that approach would work. Something else would need to be done. And what Nelson Chamisa has just declared on national television in abroad in Botswana is a step in the right direction, like I've said, and it might actually signal that there might actually be negotiations that might not actually have nothing to do with the conduct of elections, but this issue, the simple issue that politicians in ZANU-PF, those who have committed crimes against humanity, they will not be handed over to the International Criminal Court once the opposition has taken power. I might be wrong on this, but to my mind, this is the stumbling block towards the opposition taking power in Zimbabwe. And it was mentioned in 2008 as part of the reason why Emmerson Mnangagwa himself stopped Robert Mugabe from resigning and handing over power in 2008. And it's not only Zimbabwe. In 2011, Laura Gbago, the former president of Ivory Coast, was charged by the International Criminal Court, and then in 2011 again, Muammar Gaddafi, before he was ousted, the International Criminal Court had issued an arrest warrant, and then you have got that guy from Sudan, Omar al-Bashir. He was the ICC International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant in 2009, and he was accused of things like murder, torture, and rape against people who were not part of his populations who were not Arabs in the Darfur region of Western Sudan, what is now South Sudan. So it's what Nelson Chamisa. You might actually take what Nelson Chamisa was saying yesterday in Botswana as just politicians talk, but what he is actually saying, besides winning elections, besides campaigning, that's the major problem in Zimbabwe. The problem where you have people who have potentially committed crimes against humanity, and they are prominent politicians in ZANU-PF. They know very well that once they have lost power, they are likely to be handed over to the International Criminal Court in The Hague. And so this is the problem. And some of these, the crimes, they are not, they did not, it's not something from the past, just this past week, we saw in Belvedere, people's houses being demolished. So you have got in urban areas people who have built their properties, people who have used all their lifetime savings to find somewhere where they can build a property, where they can raise families, and their properties are being razed to the ground. They're just arbitrary acts of the demolitions. And the High Court itself, in the case of those demolitions, the High Court actually ruled that the local authorities were using outdated laws, and it's a violation of people's constitutional rights, things like what lawyers refer to as freedom from arbitrary eviction. But then you see the law in Zimbabwe is weaponized. The law is used to punish opponents of the ruling party. And under the cover of things like say demolitions, they are saying, oh no, the people in Ridgeview, they have they built those properties without a proper local planning authority, and the land barons, they sold that land without authorization from the proper authorities. But then you see, the question is, if they knew all this, why not arrest those people? And why not find some way? You can't punish people who are actually aspiring to go on the property ladder. That's what everybody else aspires to do. And you can't criminalize people for aspiring to bring up families, to have a property. And if you look at the pictures, those are 5-6 bedroom properties, and they are not slums. They are houses which by anyway in any country in the world, people would die to have such properties. but the authorities are demolishing those properties nonetheless. And so these are the issues the ordinary civilian people, the ordinary civilian population is facing in Zimbabwe. And surprisingly, the council has stated that it plans to repossess the land way in Ridgeview, where it has actually carried out those demolitions and those evictions, and the whole process smells like someone has actually planned to bring as much hardship as possible on the people. They want to allocate this land to people who are on the housing waiting list. But if you have already made those people homeless and they have nowhere to stay, those are the very same people we are talking about. So it defeats the purpose to evict people who are already in properties. And then you are saying you are going to allocate that land to someone who is on the housing waiting list. But that land had already been built already. People were already in properties. And those things like you're saying there were no proper planning authorizations, but those are simply administrative procedures which you can simply put right by just a formal declaration. And those people who are in the town council, who are in the courts, they possess all those sort of remedies to do. But then what you get is that, like Emerson Mnangagwa will tell you that, like, oh, Zimbabwe is a democracy. We follow the constitution, but they don't follow their constitution. This is a classic example. We are not talking about things that happened 2 years ago, 3 years ago. We are talking about the here and now. That was on Thursday. Just 2 days ago, when they did these demolitions, and they are making people homeless intentionally, deliberately. Right, thank you for following this piece, and please share and like, and if you think these issues I have addressed in this discussion are of relevance, please just drop your comment in the box below. Thank you. Bye.